Commander Nera stood at the observation window, her 4 eyes fixed on the stars outside. The deep black of space stretched endlessly before her, sprinkled with distant lights that had been her only companions besides her crew for the past 20 years. She adjusted her uniform, a sleek, silvery garment that hugged her slender blue form, and sighed. 20 years on the research vessel Starlight Voyager with an all-female crew of her own kind. 20 years of collecting samples, documenting new planets, and searching for other intelligent life. The ship had become home, but lately, Nera found herself wondering what else existed beyond their mission. "Commander, you should rest," said Medical Officer Sora, approaching with quiet steps. "Your shift ended 2 hours ago." Nera's antennae twitched slightly, betraying her restlessness. "I know, Sora. Something feels different tonight. A feeling I can't explain." Sora smiled, her pale purple skin crinkling around her eyes. "You scientists and your feelings. The captain wants the new star charts by morning." As Sora left, Nera turned back to the window. That's when she saw it, a faint glimmer that didn't match any star pattern. Something moving. She pressed the communication panel on her wrist. "Captain Hana, we have an unidentified object at coordinates 227 to 8904. Captain Hana's voice crackled back immediately. "Natural or artificial?" Nera adjusted the observation sensors, zooming in on the object. Her heart beat faster as the image cleared. "Artificial, Captain. It appears to be a vessel. Damage." Within minutes, the bridge buzzed with activity. Captain Hana, tall and commanding with deep blue skin and decorated antennae that marked her rank, studied the main screen. "Life signs?" she asked, her voice steady despite the historic significance of the moment. Lieutenant Minna ran her 6-fingered hands over the scanning controls. "One life sign. Faint. Not matching any known patterns in our database." "Prepare to bring the vessel into Docking Bay 3, ordered Captain Hana. "Commander Nera, assemble a science team. Medical Officer Sora, prepare for a possible medical emergency." Nera felt a thrill run through her body. After 2 decades of searching, they had found something. Someone. The damaged ship was unlike anything they had seen before. Smaller than their vessel, with strange angular designs and symbols they couldn't read. The rescue team, protected in their environment suits, carefully cut through the sealed door. "The atmosphere inside appears breathable for us," reported Engineer Tai over the communication system, "but with higher oxygen levels than we're used to." Nera watched from behind the safety barrier as the team entered the ship. Minutes felt like hours until Engineer Tai's voice came through again. "We found the pilot, unconscious but alive. Very different from us. Bringing him, aboard now." The medical bay was silent except for the soft beeping of monitoring equipment. Nara couldn't take her eyes off the being on the examination table. He was taller than any of them, with brownish-pink skin instead of the blue and purple tones of her species. No antennae, only 5 fingers on each hand, and strange fur-like material on top of his head. "His physiology is fascinating," whispered Sora, running a scanner over the unconscious form. "Bilateral symmetry like us, but internal organs arranged differently. And the genetic structure, completely unlike ours." Captain Hana stood at the foot of the table, her expression unreadable. "Is he dangerous?" "I don't believe so," said Nara, studying the being's face. "His ship had scientific equipment, not weapons. And look at his hands. They're soft. Not a warrior's hands." "He's stabilizing," Sora reported. "The Universal Translator is analyzing the language files from his ship. We should be able to communicate when he wakes." As if on cue, the being's eyes fluttered open. Unlike their solid-colored eyes, his had white surrounds with brown centers that widened in obvious shock at the sight of them. He tried to sit up, then winced in pain. "Be still," Sora said gently, though the translator hadn't finished its work. The being spoke, his voice deeper than any of theirs. The words were meaningless sounds, but the tone conveyed confusion and wonder rather than fear. Captain Hannah stepped forward. "I am Captain Hannah of the research vessel Starlight Voyager *. Can you understand me?" The translator beeped, processing, then conveyed her words to him in his language. His expression changed to one of amazement. "I am Dr. Jin," he replied slowly, the translator converting his speech. "Human xenobiologist from Earth. Where am I? What are you?" Nera moved closer, fascinated. "We are Lyrians. I am Commander Nera, science officer. Your ship was damaged. We brought you aboard for medical treatment." The human, Jin, looked around at the gathered crew members, all watching him with undisguised curiosity. "You're all female?" he asked, confusion evident in his voice. Nera tilted her head, puzzled by the question. "We are all crew members," she replied simply. The human smiled slightly, a gesture they recognized from their own species, though his face moved differently. "On my world, we have two distinct biological sexes. I am male." Captain Hannah stepped forward. "Your biology matters less than your intentions. Why were you in this sector of space?" "Research mission," Jin replied, trying again to sit up. This time, Sora helped him. "Studying stellar phenomena. We were attacked by an unknown ship. The rest of my team." His voice faltered. "You were the only life sign we detected," Nera said softly. "I'm sorry." Captain Hannah's antennae twitched, a sign of decision-making. "Commander Nera, as science officer, this human is your responsibility. Learn about his species, his capabilities, his intentions. Determine if he poses any threat to our mission or our people." As the others filed out, Jin's gaze locked with Nera's. His eyes, so strange with their colored centers, studied her with the same scientific curiosity she felt. "This is the first contact between our species," Nera said, feeling the weight of the moment. Jin nodded. "On my world, we've wondered for centuries if we were alone in the universe." "We've wondered the same," Nera admitted. 20 years on this mission, searching for intelligent life." Jin smiled again, the expression transforming his alien features into something she found strangely appealing. 20 years without seeing a man, and you're just standing there?" he asked, his translator conveying what seemed to be a joking tone. "Come here, human. You have much to tell me, and I have much to learn from you." Nera felt a strange flutter in her chest cavity, where her 3 hearts beat in sequence. This was what she had joined the expedition for: new discoveries, new knowledge. But as she pulled up a chair beside the human's bed and began to ask her first questions, she sensed this particular discovery might change more than just their scientific understanding of the universe. Behind them, through the medical bay window, stars continued their silent journey across the black canvas of space, witnesses to a meeting that would alter the course of 2 civilizations forever. The observation deck of the Starlight Voyager offered the best view of the surrounding stars. Jin stood close to the curved viewport, his hand pressed against the transparent material that separated him from the vacuum of space. After 2 weeks aboard the alien vessel, he still marveled at the technology that made this possible, a material stronger than any Earth compound yet perfectly clear. "Your species has achieved remarkable things," he said as Commander Nera entered the room. Nera approached, her movements graceful despite the different structure of her joints. "As has yours, to venture so far from your home." Jin turned from the stars to look at her. In the 2 weeks since his rescue, he had grown accustomed to the blue-tinted skin and 4 eyes of the Lyrians, their slender forms and delicate antennae. What had once seemed alien now felt simply different. "I brought you something," Nera said, extending her 6-fingered hand. In her palm rested a small device. It contains educational materials about Lyria. History, culture, science. The translator has converted it for you. Jin accepted the gift with a smile. "Thank you. Knowledge exchange is the foundation of understanding." They sat on curved benches facing the stars. This had become their routine, daily meetings to share information about their respective worlds. Jin found these sessions fascinating, both professionally as a xenobiologist and personally as a human far from home. "Your ship has no males at all?" he asked, a question that had puzzled him since awakening in their medical bay. Nara's antennae twitched slightly. Jin had learned this indicated thoughtfulness. "Our deep space missions are typically single-gender. It simplifies certain aspects of ship life. On Earth, we've found mixed-gender crews work well if there are clear protocols," Jin explained. "How does your species reproduce?" Nara asked bluntly, her scientific curiosity overriding any sense of personal boundaries. "Our records are unclear on human biology." Jin felt his face warm slightly. "We have sexual reproduction. Male and female contribute genetic material that combines to form offspring." Nara's skin flushed a deeper blue, their equivalent of blushing, Jin had realized. Fascinating. Lyrians reproduce through budding after a proper nutrient cycle. A parent grows an offspring directly from their own body. Jin nodded, making mental notes for his own research. "That explains the similarities in your appearance." Nara tilted her head. "Are all humans as different from each other as you are from us?" "No, humans have variations in height, skin color, facial features. But we're all recognizably human," Jin explained. "Just as your crew members look similar to me, but you can easily tell each other apart." "Captain Hana wants me to evaluate if humans would make good allies," Nara said suddenly. "What should I tell her?" Jin considered the question carefully. "I believe our differences make us valuable to each other. Humans have survived by adapting and cooperating. We value exploration and knowledge, like Lyrians." Later that day, Jin joined several crew members in the ship's garden, a vast chamber filled with plants from the Lyrian homeworld. Engineer Ta was showing him how they cultivated food crops in space. "These fruits contain all nutrients Lyrians need," Ta explained, pointing to purple orbs hanging from twisted vines. Jin reached for one at the same moment as Nara, who had just entered the garden. Their hands touched briefly. Nara pulled back as if shocked by electricity. "I apologize," Jin said quickly, aware he might have violated some cultural taboo. "No need," Nara replied, her voice slightly higher than normal. "Physical contact is just unfamiliar to us. We rarely touch outside of medical necessity." Jin nodded, filing away this important cultural information. Humans often touch to communicate. Handshakes, hugs, pats on the shoulder. "I'll be more careful." Ta watched this exchange with evident curiosity. "The human should join our meal cycle tonight," she suggested to Nara. Cultural exchange includes food rituals. That evening, Jin sat at a round table with 5 Lyrians, including Nara and Captain Hana. The food looked nothing like Earth cuisine, colors and textures he couldn't compare to anything he knew. But his scanner confirmed it was safe for human consumption. On Earth, sharing food builds community, Jin explained as he cautiously tasted a blue paste. It was surprisingly pleasant, like a sweet vegetable. "For Lyrians as well," Captain Hana said. "Tell us of your world, Dr. Jin. What would we see if we visited?" Jin described Earth's oceans and mountains, its cities and forests. The Lyrians listened intently, asking questions about climate, wildlife, and human settlements. "Your species lives in family units?" asked Medical Officer Sora, fascinated. "Most do," Jin confirmed, "parents raising children together." "Interesting. Lyrian children are raised in community centers with multiple caretakers," Nara explained. "It ensures consistent education and development." After the meal, Captain Hana left Jin with a surprising announcement. "Tomorrow you may access our historical archives. Commander Nara will assist you." Later that night, unable to sleep in his assigned quarters, Jin examined his ship's damaged data core. Most information was lost, but one encrypted file remained intact. Using his emergency override codes, he accessed the hidden orders for his mission. "__scientific research is your cover. Your primary objective is to assess alien civilizations for potential threats to Earth. Gather intelligence on technology, military capabilities, and resources underscore. Jin sat back, troubled. His mission wasn't just scientific exploration. He had been sent as an unwitting spy. The thought made him uncomfortable, especially now that he knew the Lyrians as people, not just subjects of study. Meanwhile, in her own quarters, Nera accessed ancient historical texts not available in the public archives. Her high-security clearance allowed her to view restricted information. What she found made her antennae stiffen in shock. The records contained accounts of previous encounters with humans, deliberately erased from official history. According to these documents, Lyrian explorers had visited Earth centuries ago, but withdrew after observing human conflict. The government had classified humans as potentially dangerous and restricted all contact. Yet the Jin she knew didn't match this assessment. He was curious, peaceful, respectful. The next morning, Nera met Jin in the archive room, both carrying secrets they weren't sure they should share. "Is something troubling you?" Jin asked, noticing her unusual stillness. Nera's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of internal conflict Jin had learned to recognize. "Jin," she said finally, "what if our people have met before? And what if neither of our governments told us the whole truth about why we're out here among the stars?" Before Jin could respond, the ship's alarm system activated with a piercing wail. Captain Hana's voice came through the communication system. "All crew to emergency stations. Unknown vessel approaching at high speed." This is not a drill. Jin and Nera exchanged a look of concern before rushing from the room. Their cultural exchange was about to be interrupted by something far more urgent and potentially dangerous than historical secrets. The alarm blared through the corridors of the Starlight Voyager *, its harsh sound breaking the usual peaceful hum of the ship's systems. Jin followed Nera as they rushed toward the bridge, crew members darting past them to their emergency stations. "What kind of threats have you encountered out here before?" Jin asked as they hurried along. "Minor ones. Space debris, radiation storms," Nera replied, her antennae flat against her head, a sign of anxiety Jin had learned to recognize. Nothing that required full emergency protocols. The bridge doors slid open to reveal controlled chaos. Captain Hana stood at the center, her tall form rigid as she issued commands. The main screen showed a distant vessel approaching, its design unlike anything Jin had seen before. Dark, angular, with strange protrusions that might be weapons. "Status report," Captain Hana demanded. Lieutenant Mina's 6 fingers flew across her control panel. "Unknown vessel approaching at high speed. No response to communication attempts. Our scanners can't identify its composition. We've also lost contact with the Lunar Whisper *, added Communications Officer Dury. Their last transmission indicated they were under attack in the neighboring sector. Jin moved closer to the screen, studying the approaching ship with growing unease. The attack pattern, the unusual design, something about it triggered a memory. "Captain," he said, stepping forward, "I recognize this attack pattern. My people have encountered these ships before." All eyes on the bridge turned to him. Captain Hana's antennae twitched forward. "Explain." "They're called the Harvesters," Jin said, recalling classified briefings he'd received before his mission. "They've raided remote human outposts for years. We don't know their origins or exact intentions." Lieutenant Mina moved her hand to her side weapon, her expression hardening. "Or perhaps they're your allies, coming to retrieve you." "Mina," Nora protested. "It's a legitimate question," Captain Hana said calmly. "Dr. Jin appears on our ship, and suddenly we face an unknown threat." Jin met the captain's 4-eye gaze steadily. "If these are the same beings I've heard of, they're enemies to humans as well as Lyrians. They attack isolated ships and stations, take what they want, and leave no survivors." A heavy silence fell over the bridge, broken only by the beeping of monitoring systems. "What do they want?" Nora asked. Jin shook his head. We're not certain. Resources, technology. Some reports suggest they collect biological samples. Captain Hannah made a quick decision. Battle stations. Prepare defensive systems. Plot an escape route that doesn't lead back to Lyrian space. Jin watched the crew move with practiced efficiency. Despite their primarily scientific mission, they clearly had military training. As the ship's engines hummed with increased power, he turned to Captain Hannah. "I can help," he offered. "I study the reports of their attacks." The captain considered him for a moment. "Commander Nara, take Dr. Jin to auxiliary control. See if his knowledge can be useful, but watch him carefully." As they hurried to auxiliary control, Nara spoke quietly. "Some of the crew don't trust you. It's not personal. We've never encountered humans before." "Actually, you have," Jin replied, deciding to share what he suspected. "I found data in my ship's computer suggesting my mission wasn't entirely scientific, and I think you found something similar in your historical records." Nara's steps faltered briefly. "How did you know?" "Your question yesterday about our people's meeting before. The way you've been looking at me since then, like you're reassessing everything." They reached auxiliary control, a smaller version of the bridge with backup systems for the ship's major functions. Engineer Ta was already there, preparing defensive protocols. "Our species have met before," Nara confirmed in a low voice as they took their stations. "Centuries ago. Lyrian explorers visited Earth, but withdrew after observing human conflicts. Our government classified humans as potentially dangerous and restricted all contact." Jin nodded slowly. "And my government apparently sent me to assess whether your species poses a threat to Earth. We're both pawns in a larger game." Nara's four eyes blinked in sequence. Yet here we are, facing a common enemy. The ship suddenly jolted, throwing them against the control panels. The lights flickered as the vessel absorbed some kind of energy blast. "Direct hit to our aft shields," Tai reported, her fingers moving rapidly over the controls. "Shield integrity at 82%. The communication system crackled with Captain Hannah's voice. "All stations report. Prepare for evasive maneuvers." Jin studied the tactical display, noticing a pattern in the enemy ship's movements. "They're hurting us," he realized. "Each attack pushes us in a specific direction." "Toward that nebula," Nara observed, pointing to a cloudy mass of gas and dust on the star chart. "Why?" "Limited visibility. Disrupted communications," Jin suggested. "Classic ambush tactics." He accessed the weapons control panel, quickly reviewing the Lyrian defense systems. They were impressive but designed for deflection rather than destruction. "Your weapons are defensive," he noted. "Can they be recalibrated for a more aggressive response?" Ta looked skeptical. "Our ethics prohibit unprovoked aggression." "This isn't unprovoked," Jin argued. "And sometimes the best defense is a strong offense." The ship rocked again under another attack. Jin steadied himself against the control panel. "Look, I understand your reservations, but I've seen what these harvesters do. They don't take prisoners. They take parts, technology, resources, biological samples." Nara and Tai exchanged looks. "What are you suggesting?" Nara asked. Jin pointed to the tactical display. "If we modify your deflector shields to emit a focused pulse at these frequencies, we might disrupt their targeting systems long enough to escape. That would require redirecting power from life support systems," Tai objected. "Temporarily," Jin said. "Just long enough to break their pursuit." Nara studied the calculations Jin had entered. "It could work, but it's risky." "Less risky than being caught," Jin insisted. After a moment's hesitation, Nara opened a channel to the bridge. "Captain, Dr. Jin has a suggestion for countering the attack." Captain Hannah listened to the plan, her expression unreadable. "The human strategy places great trust in his hands," she noted. "How do we know this won't disable our systems instead?" "I'll implement the modifications myself," Jin offered. "If anything goes wrong, I'll be affected just like everyone else." Lieutenant Mina's voice cut in over the communication system. Captain, we can't trust him. This could be exactly what he wants, access to our defense systems. He's telling the truth, Nara interjected, standing protectively near Jin. I've spent enough time with him to recognize when he's being honest. Your objectivity seems compromised, Commander Nara. Captain Hana observed, her antennae flattening. Not compromised, Nara replied firmly. Enhanced by new perspective. Captain, we face an immediate threat. Jin has information that could help us survive. The ship shuddered under another attack, more violent than before. Warning lights flashed across the control panels. Direct hit to primary power couplings. Engineer Tay reported. Shields failing. Captain Hana made her decision. Implement Dr. Jin's plan. Now. Jin moved quickly, working alongside Ta to reconfigure the shield harmonics, while Nara redirected power from non-essential systems. As their fingers flew over the controls, Jin felt a strange sense of connection. Three beings from different worlds working together against a common threat. Ready on your mark, Captain. Jin reported when the modifications were complete. All hands brace for impact. Captain Hana ordered. Execute defensive pulse. Jin pressed the activation sequence. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then the ship hummed with gathered energy before releasing a powerful wave that rippled outward in all directions. On the tactical display, they watched as the enemy vessel's movements became erratic. Its weapons fire went wide, missing the Starlight Voyager completely. It worked, Nara exclaimed. Their targeting systems are disrupted. Full power to engines. Captain Hana ordered. Get us out of here while they're disoriented. As the Starlight Voyager surged forward, leaving the attacker behind, Jin felt relief wash over him. But it was short-lived. Captain, Lieutenant Mina reported from the bridge. We're detecting a transmission from the enemy vessel. It's broadcasting in multiple frequencies, including ones compatible with human communication protocols. Jin's blood ran cold. They're sending a message to others of their kind. We need to decode it. Captain Hana's voice came through the communication system, steely with resolve. Commander Nara, bring Dr. Jin to the bridge immediately. It seems we have more to discuss than just history. As they hurried back to the bridge, Nara caught Jin's arm. The first time, she had initiated physical contact. Whatever happens next, she said quietly, I believe you're on our side. Jin nodded, grateful for her trust. But as they walked, he couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was just the beginning of a much greater danger, one that might force both their species to confront not only an external threat, but the lies that had kept them apart for centuries. The Starlight Voyager shuddered as another blast hit their shields. Jin grabbed the edge of the console to steady himself. After 3 days of running from the harvesters, the ship was showing signs of strain. So was the crew. Shield integrity at 48%, Engineer Tay reported, her voice steady despite the situation. We cannot withstand many more direct hits. Captain Hana's antennae were perfectly still, a sign of intense concentration Jin had learned to recognize. Options, she demanded. We've tried outrunning them, hiding in the nebula, and disrupting their systems, Nara said. Each strategy works briefly before they adapt. Jin studied the tactical display showing the pursuing vessel. Something about its behavior had been bothering him. They're not trying to destroy us, he realized. They're wearing us down. They want to board. Lieutenant Mina's hand moved to her weapon. Let them try. No, Jin said firmly. I've read reports of ships that fought boarding parties. The harvesters use some kind of paralytic gas. No one survives. The bridge fell silent except for the beeping of warning systems. The decoded transmission mentioned viable specimens. Communications Officer Dury reminded them, both Lyrian and human. Jin met Nara's four-eyed gaze across the bridge. They had spent hours analyzing the intercepted message, discovering the harvesters had been tracking his research vessel before the attack that left him the sole survivor. "They're collectors," Jin said, gathering biological samples from different species. "For what purpose?" Captain Hannah asked. "Unknown, but they seem particularly interested in reproductive biology." Jin hesitated. The fact that they're now pursuing a ship with both Lyrian and human biology aboard can't be coincidence. Nera moved closer to Jin, her scientific mind racing. "What if we use that interest against them? Create a false biological signature that draws them away?" "A decoy," Jin nodded, excitement building. "We could modify a probe to emit biological markers similar to ours, but slightly altered. Make it seem like a more valuable target." Captain Hannah considered the plan. How quickly could this be implemented? With Dr. Jin's biological knowledge and our technology, perhaps 3 hours, Nera estimated. "Make it 2, the captain ordered. "Lieutenant Mina, prepare a defensive perimeter in case they board despite our efforts." As the crew moved to their tasks, the ship rocked with another hit. Alarms wailed as systems reported damage throughout the vessel. "Hull breach on Deck 3, someone shouted. "Emergency bulkheads activated," Engineer Tay responded, fingers flying over controls. Captain Hana's voice rose above the chaos. "Damage report." Jin felt the deck shift beneath his feet as the artificial gravity fluctuated. Warning lights flashed red across all consoles. "Lower deck depressurizing," Tay reported grimly. "Emergency systems responding, but Section 7 is cut off." Nera gasped. "The biology lab is in Section 7. We need those facilities for the decoy plan." Jin made a quick decision. "I'll go. I know what samples we need." "Too dangerous," Captain Hana objected. "That section is barely habitable." "I'll go with him," Nera insisted. "2 scientists work faster than 1. After a moment's hesitation, the captain nodded. "Take emergency gear. You have 15 minutes before we need to seal that section permanently." Jin and Nera hurried to the equipment locker, donning emergency oxygen masks and thermal protection. The journey to the damaged section required navigating corridors where emergency lighting cast eerie shadows. They could feel the difference in air pressure as they approached the damaged area. "Temperature dropping," Nara warned as the final door slid open to reveal the biology lab. The room was tilted at an odd angle, equipment scattered across the floor. A small breach in the outer hull had been temporarily sealed by emergency foam, but the hissing sound suggested it wouldn't hold long. "Quick," Jin said. "We need cellular samples with reproductive markers." They worked efficiently, gathering vials and specimens despite the freezing temperature. Jin's fingers grew numb through his protective gloves as he selected the most convincing biological materials. "That's everything," he said finally, securing the last sample container. As they turned to leave, a violent tremor shook the ship. The emergency seal on the hull breach ruptured with a thunderous crack. Air rushed toward the opening, pulling loose equipment with it. Nara lost her footing on the tilted floor and slid toward the breach. Jin lunged forward, catching her arm with one hand while grabbing a bolted-down console with the other. Pain shot through his shoulder as he held on against the pull of escaping air. "The emergency door," he shouted. "It's going to seal automatically." Indeed, the thick bulkhead door was already beginning to close, their only escape route being cut off by safety protocols designed to protect the rest of the ship. With strength born of desperation, Jin pulled Nera toward him, and then shoved them both toward the narrowing doorway. They tumbled through the gap just as it sealed behind them with a decisive thud. They lay on the corridor floor, breathing heavily despite the thin air. Jin realized he was still clutching Nera's arm, and she wasn't pulling away. In fact, her other hand had come to rest on his. "You saved my life," she said simply. "You would have done the same," Jin replied. For a moment, they remained there, the crisis creating a connection that transcended their biological differences. Then reality reasserted itself as the ship's communication system crackled to life. Commander Nera, Dr. Jin, report status, Captain Hannah demanded. We have the samples, Nera responded, slowly rising to her feet, returning to main laboratory now. Back in the functioning laboratory, Jin and Nera worked side by side to create the biological decoy. Despite their near-death experience, or perhaps because of it, their coordination was seamless, anticipating each other's needs without speaking. This might actually work, Jin said as they loaded the modified biological material into a probe. It will work, Nera replied with surprising certainty. Our differences make this plan stronger. The harvesters won't expect two species to work together so effectively. When they returned to the bridge, they found the situation had worsened. The pursuing vessel had closed the distance and was preparing boarding tubes. Decoy ready for deployment, Nera reported. Launch immediately, Captain Hannah ordered. The small probe shot away from the Starlight Voyager *, emitting the carefully crafted biological signatures. For a tense minute, nothing happened. Then, gradually, the harvester ship changed course, following the more tempting target. A cheer went up from the exhausted crew. Captain Hannah allowed herself a small smile of relief. Damage control teams to all affected areas, she ordered. Engineer Ta, how soon can we resume full speed? Main engines need 6 hours for repairs, Ta reported, but we can maintain current velocity on auxiliary power. As the immediate crisis passed, Jin found himself suddenly lightheaded. Looking down, he noticed blood seeping through his uniform, an injury from the lab incident he hadn't even felt in the rush of adrenaline. You're hurt, Nera said, noticing before anyone else. It's nothing, Jin started to say, but his knees buckled. Medical Officer Sora rushed forward with a scanner. Laceration across his back. Must have happened during the decompression event. Take him to medical immediately. As Jin was helped from the bridge, he heard Lieutenant Mina's voice behind him. The human saved Commander Nera's life. Perhaps we judged too quickly. Hours later, repaired and resting in the medical bay, Jin received an unexpected visitor. Engineer Ta entered somewhat stiffly, carrying a small device in her 6-fingered hand. For you, she said simply, placing the communication unit beside him. It's configured to access crew channels. You are no longer restricted to visitor protocols. Jin recognized the significance of this gesture. Thank you. Ta nodded once. Your quick thinking today saved many lives, including Nera's. She paused. She is important to our crew. She's important to me too, Jin admitted, surprised by his own honesty. Tai studied him with all 4 eyes. Perhaps our differences are not as significant as our similarities. With that cryptic statement, she departed. Later, Nera visited, bringing status reports and, more importantly, company. The decoy worked perfectly, she reported. The harvester ship is now 2 systems away, chasing what it believes to be unique biological specimens. But they'll be back when they realize they've been tricked, Jin warned. Nera nodded, her expression serious. Which is why Captain Hannah has made a decision. We're altering course to the nearest human outpost. She believes both our peoples need to know about this threat. Jin felt a complex mix of emotions, relief at the thought of contact with humans again, but also uncertainty about what it would mean for his relationship with the Lyrians. With Nera. What happens then? He asked quietly. Nera's hand moved cautiously to rest near his. Not quite touching, but close. I don't know, but whatever comes next, we face it together. Lyrians and humans. Perhaps the alliance our governments have avoided for centuries. Jin nodded, feeling strangely hopeful despite their situation. Crisis had forged a connection that might never have existed otherwise. As Nera began explaining the repair progress, Jin realized that sometimes the greatest discoveries came from the most unexpected circumstances, even 20 years of isolation followed by a desperate fight for survival. The observation deck of the Starlight Voyager was quiet as Jin stood watching the stars. 1 week had passed since their escape from the harvesters. The ship was repaired enough for safe travel, though scars remained both in its structure and in the minds of the crew. "There you are," Nara said, entering the deck. She moved to stand beside him, close enough that he could feel the slight difference in body temperature that Lyrians maintained. "Captain Hana is calling a full crew meeting in 1 hour." Jin nodded, his eyes still fixed on the vast expanse of space before them. "To discuss our arrival at the human outpost tomorrow." "Yes." Nara hesitated. "Are you nervous about returning to your people?" Jin considered the question. 5 weeks ago, he had been the sole survivor of a destroyed research vessel, rescued by aliens he knew nothing about. Now he was bringing those same aliens to a human outpost as allies against a common enemy. "Not nervous," he said finally, "but things will change. This ship has become a world of its own. Out here, it was just us, Lyrians and one human, learning about each other without outside influence." Nara's antennae twitched in understanding. "You fear the politics of our governments will interfere with what we've built, don't you?" Jin turned to face her. In the soft lighting of the observation deck, her blue skin had a gentle glow, and her 4 eyes reflected the starlight. "I do," she admitted. "But I also believe what we discovered together is too important to keep to ourselves." Captain Hana's voice came through the ship's communication system. "Commander Nara and Dr. Jin to the bridge. We've received a transmission from the human outpost." They found the bridge in a state of controlled activity. Captain Hana stood at the center, her tall form straight and commanding. "The human outpost has responded to our approach," she informed them. "They are cautious about our arrival." "Understandable," Jin said. "They've never seen a Lyrian ship before, at least not officially." Captain Hana nodded. "They've requested to speak with you, to verify our peaceful intentions." Jin stepped forward as the main screen activated. The face of a human woman appeared, her expression professionally neutral but with obvious tension in her eyes. "This is Commander Taeyan of Outpost Delta. Identify yourself." "Commander, this is Dr. Jin from the Earth science vessel *Aurora*. I was rescued by the Lyrian research ship *Starlight Voyager*, after my vessel was destroyed by harvester attackers." The commander's eyes widened slightly at the mention of harvesters. "We detected your ship's destruction, but found no survivors at the coordinates. The Lyrians reached me first," Jin explained. "They granted me safety and treated me with respect. Now they come as allies with crucial information about the harvester threat." Commander Taeyan studied him, then looked past him to the alien crew. "This would be the first official contact between our species." "Actually, it wouldn't be," Jin said, deciding honesty was essential. "Both our governments have hidden previous contacts. That secrecy has left us vulnerable to common enemies." A long silence followed as Commander Taeyan processed this information. Finally, she nodded. "Approach on your current vector. We'll prepare a diplomatic reception. Outpost Delta out." As the screen went dark, Captain Hana turned to her crew. "Prepare all relevant data on the harvester encounters. Commander Nara, work with Dr. Jin to create a comprehensive briefing." Hours later, the entire crew gathered in the ship's assembly hall. Jin stood beside Captain Hana as she addressed her people. "Tomorrow we make official contact with humans," she began. "This is not the mission we were given 20 years ago, but it is perhaps the most important one we could undertake." Murmurs ran through the assembled crew. Many had spent their entire adult lives on this ship, searching for new life among the stars. Now they had found it, though not in the way they expected. "Our governments have kept secrets," Captain Hana continued. "They have kept our species apart. Perhaps they had reasons they believed were valid. But now we face a threat that concerns us all." She gestured toward Jin. "Dr. Jin has become more than just our guest. He has fought beside us, bled for us, and shared knowledge that saved our lives. He has shown us that humans and Lyrians can work together despite our differences." Jin felt a swell of emotion as he looked out at the faces watching him, faces that had once seemed so alien, but now felt familiar. "I came from Earth seeking new knowledge," he said simply. I found not just knowledge but understanding, not just data but wisdom. You have taught me that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker." After the assembly, Jin and Nera worked late into the night, preparing documents and presentations for the human outpost. As the ship's cycle shifted to night mode, and most crew members retired to their quarters, they remained in the data center, surrounded by screens of information. "I've been thinking about what happens after tomorrow," Nora said, breaking a comfortable silence. Jin looked up from his work. "What do you mean?" "You'll return to your people. I'll continue with my mission. Our paths will separate." The thought had been hovering at the edge of Jin's mind for days, but hearing it spoken aloud made it suddenly, painfully real. "It doesn't have to be that way," he said. "The harvester threat gives us reason to maintain contact, to work together." Nera's antennae drooped slightly. "Official contact, yes. But this," she gestured between them, "what we've built here is not something our government's planned for." Jin set aside his data pad and moved closer to her. "Then perhaps it's time for new plans, new beginnings." Morning brought the sight of the human outpost, a sprawling structure of metal and composite materials orbiting a small moon. As the Starlight Voyager approached, smaller vessels moved to escort them to a docking port large enough to accommodate the Lyrian ship. On the bridge, the crew prepared for arrival. Each wore their formal uniforms, decorated with the symbols of their scientific disciplines. Captain Hana had decided they would present themselves as they were, explorers and scientists, not military or political representatives. "Final approach," Lieutenant Minna announced from the helm. Docking procedures initiated. Captain Hana turned to Jin and Nera. "You two will accompany me as primary contacts. The rest of the diplomatic team will follow." As they moved toward the airlock, Jin noticed Nera seemed unusually quiet. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. "I was just thinking about cycles," she replied. 20 years ago, my people came to space looking for new life. We found it, but chose to keep that knowledge hidden. Now we have a second chance to make different choices." Jin understood what she wasn't saying. They too had a choice to make, about their future, about what they meant to each other despite coming from worlds apart. The airlock hissed as pressure equalized with the human station. The doors slid open to reveal a delegation of humans waiting on the other side. Commander Tayan stood at the front, flanked by security personnel and diplomatic officers. "On behalf of humanity, welcome to Outpost Delta," she said formally. Captain Hana stepped forward. "On behalf of Lyria, we come in peace and with urgent purpose." Jin watched as the two leaders clasped hands, the human gesture of greeting that Captain Hana had practiced for this moment. It was a small thing, this touch between species, but it represented something profound. Later, after hours of initial discussions, Jin found a quiet moment alone with Nera on an observation platform overlooking the docking bay, where the Starlight Voyager rested. "They're listening," Jin said with relief. "Both sides are taking the harvester threat seriously." Nera nodded. "And they've agreed to form a joint research team. Scientists from both our worlds working together. They're looking for volunteers to lead it," Jin said, trying to sound casual. "People who have experience with both species." Nera's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of understanding. "That would be a long-term commitment. Years of work together. 20 years without seeing a man, and now you're stuck with one," Jin said with a small smile, echoing their first meeting. Nera's hand moved slowly, deliberately, until it rested against his, a gesture that had once been alien to her, but now felt natural. Not stuck. Choosing. Outside the viewport, the stars continued their eternal journey across the void. The same stars that had witnessed their meeting, their struggle, and now their new beginning. Different worlds, different biologies, but a shared future that neither could have imagined before a damaged ship drifted into the path of explorers who had been searching for exactly what they found.